The storm raged outside, its howling winds battering against the small house perched on the cliff's edge. Inside, the air was thick with tension. James Reynolds, once a man of ambition and success, sat in silence, his eyes fixed on the flickering flames in the fireplace. The world outside had long since turned against him. A series of bad decisions, betrayal by those he trusted, and a relentless pursuit of wealth had led him to this moment, alone, broken, and with nowhere to run. His life had once been filled with luxury. He'd climbed the corporate ladder, always hungry for more money, more power, more control. But somewhere along the way, he'd lost sight of what truly mattered. Friends turned to enemies, relationships turned to ashes. And now, after a failed business venture and the collapse of everything he had worked for, he had nowhere left to turn. As the storm howled louder, there came a knock at the door. James hesitated. Who could it be at this hour? The town was empty, and most people knew to stay away from him these days. He reluctantly stood up, his knees weak from years of stress. As he opened the door, there stood an older man, dressed in a tattered coat, his eyes sharp and kind at the same time. "I'm sorry to bother you," the man said in a quiet voice. "I've heard you've been going through tough times. I've come to offer you a chance to change things." James was skeptical. "And why would you care about me?" The man smiled gently. "Sometimes, the world gives us one last chance. It's up to us whether we take it or let it slip away." James stepped aside, unsure but curious. The stranger entered the room, his presence somehow bringing a sense of calm to the otherwise tense atmosphere. The two men sat across from each other, the fire casting long shadows on the walls. "I've been where you are," the man continued, his voice low. "Lost everything, thought there was no way out. But I learned something. True success isn't about what you have. It's about what you give. The kindness you show, the people you help. That's where true power lies." James felt a flicker of something in his chest, something he hadn't felt in years, hope. "But how?" James asked, his voice barely a whisper. The man looked at him, eyes soft but determined. "By helping someone else. One small act of kindness can change everything." The storm outside had quieted, and for the first time in a long while, James felt the weight on his shoulders begin to lift. He realized the man was right. All his wealth, all his achievements, none of it had ever truly brought him peace. He had always focused on taking, but he had never learned how to give. For the next few days, James started small. He helped a neighbor fix their broken fence. He volunteered at a local shelter, offering his time rather than his money. And with each act, the fog in his mind began to clear. Slowly, he rediscovered a sense of purpose, something deeper than all the material wealth he had once craved. Months later, James stood on the same cliff where he had often gazed out in despair. But now, the world seemed different. The storm had passed, both outside and within. He had found his true calling, not in the money he had chased, but in the relationships he had rebuilt, the kindness he had given, and the life he had rediscovered. As he turned to head back inside, he saw the man again, standing at the edge of the cliff, watching him with a knowing smile. "Thank you," James said, his voice full of gratitude. The man nodded, then disappeared into the horizon, leaving James with the final lesson he would ever need to learn: sometimes, the only way to find yourself is by helping others find their way.